No one truly knows what happened that night, the last night I spent with Elvis. People remember the legend, the voice that shook the world, the sparkle of the stage lights. But I remember the man who held my hand when the lights were gone. I remember the tremor in his laugh, the softness in his eyes, the quiet between our words. Time has a strange way of folding in on itself. Decades can pass, and yet one single night can live inside you forever. That night does for me. It was the night when love and loss touched hands. I still remember the stillness of the house. Graceland always had its hum. Voices, footsteps, a piano somewhere in the distance. But that evening felt unusually hushed, like the walls themselves were listening. He had been restless for weeks. There was a new tour coming up, rehearsals, the pressure to be Elvis again. I had seen that weariness in him before, but something about it felt heavier. When he walked into the room, his smile was the same, yet it didn't reach as far as it used to. He greeted me softly. There was warmth, always warmth, but behind it, tiredness, maybe even sorrow. I asked if he was all right. He nodded, pretending. He always tried to protect me from his storms. We talked for hours about Lisa Marie, about music, about how strange life had become, how fame could feel like a golden cage. He told me, "Sometimes I wish I could just walk down the street again, Priscilla. Just walk. Nobody staring, nobody asking." I smiled and said, "You wouldn't get far." He laughed, but it faded quickly. Even now, that laugh echoes in my mind. It was the sound of a man trying to remember happiness. To understand that night, you have to understand how it all began. Because every ending begins somewhere, and ours started across the ocean, in Germany, 1959. I was just a girl then, quiet, shy, the daughter of an Air Force officer. When I met Elvis, he was already a phenomenon. Yet in that small house in Bad Nauheim, he wasn't a star. He was polite, gentle, almost uncertain. He asked if I liked music. I said yes, though I barely knew what to say to him. He played the piano for me that night, something soft, not one of his hits. I remember thinking his voice sounded like sunlight breaking through clouds. I didn't know that sound would shape the rest of my life. We talked until midnight. He asked about my family, about school, about my dreams. And when I looked up, I realized he wasn't talking to a crowd. He was talking to me. That was the secret to Elvis. No matter who you were, when he looked at you, you felt like the only person in the world. When he left Germany, my heart felt hollow. He promised to write, and he did. Letters full of warmth and longing, sometimes playful, sometimes heavy. He signed them, "Forever yours, E." Years later, when I finally came to Memphis, I was stepping into a fairy tale and a storm. Graceland was magnificent, yet it was never quiet. People came and went, phones rang, music drifted through every hallway, and there was Elvis, larger than life and yet in private, sometimes as vulnerable as a child. He would fall asleep on the couch with the TV still on, wake up humming a new tune, rush to the piano to capture it. Those were the moments I loved most, before the world woke up, when it was just him and me and the music. But even fairy tales have cracks. Fame demands everything, and Elvis gave everything. I often wondered if he ever truly rested. He'd say, "I can rest later, baby." But later never really came. Still, we built a life. Our wedding in 1967 felt like something out of a dream. White lace, flashbulbs, reporters shouting questions. But behind the smiles, I saw how much he longed for normalcy. He told me, "I don't want to be photographed right now. I just want to be your husband." And for that day, he was. Lisa's birth brought out a tenderness in him I'll never forget. He held her so carefully as if she were spun glass. He whispered, "She's our little miracle." And for a while, we were whole. But love inside a spotlight is never simple. The world always wanted more of him, more songs, more movies, more appearances. I watched as exhaustion became part of him, like a shadow he couldn't shake. He would perform until midnight, come home, and still be wide awake, energy burning through him. Sometimes he'd sit at the piano playing gospel songs, his voice raw, searching for peace. Other nights, he'd talk endlessly about music, about God. about what it all meant. He was always chasing something unseen. I remember once asking, "Do you ever wish you could stop?" He looked at me half smiling. "If I stop, who am I, Scylla?" That broke me a little because I knew he believed it. He didn't know how to be anyone but Elvis Presley, the man the world adored. There were beautiful moments, of course. Late-night drives through Memphis when he just wanted to see the city lights. We'd stop for burgers at 3 in the morning, laugh with the staff who couldn't believe who was standing in front of them. He'd say, "They're just people, baby, same as us." But there were hard nights too, nights when the phone wouldn't stop ringing, when he felt trapped by the people who claimed to love him, but only loved the fame around him. I tried to be his quiet space, the place where he could breathe. Sometimes I succeeded, sometimes I didn't. Our love changed shape over the years. It grew, it broke, it healed, it cracked again. When we finally separated, it wasn't because the love was gone. It was because we had lost ourselves inside the whirlwind. He told me once, "Maybe distance will make us find each other again." And in some strange way, it did. Even after we divorced, we never truly stopped caring. He'd call me just to talk about Lisa or to reminisce about old times. There was always warmth in his voice, that same drawl that could melt away anger. I think we both knew, no matter what life brought, we were bound by something no paper could sever. And so, as the years passed, I watched him from a distance, proud and worried all at once. He was preparing for another tour that summer. I could see in his eyes the weariness, but also the determination. He wanted to prove he still had it, still could give his fans everything. When I saw him that final night, I didn't know it would be the last. If I had, I would have held him longer, told him 1,000 more times that I loved him, reminded him that beneath the glitter and the weight of the crown, he was enough. That brings me to the night that changed everything. It was August 15th, 1977, a Monday. The kind of hot, heavy Memphis evening where even the air feels tired. I had visited earlier that day. We talked briefly on the phone later that night. He was getting ready for his upcoming tour, laying out stage clothes, finalizing his schedule, making plans. But beneath his words, I could hear something else, a kind of quiet exhaustion that had seeped into him. He said, "Scylla, I'll call you after the tour. I just gotta get through this one." His tone was gentle, but something in me felt uneasy. I asked, "Are you sure you're okay?" He chuckled. "I've been worse, baby." That was his way, always deflecting pain with humor. I told him to rest. He promised he would. But deep down, I think we both knew he wouldn't. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone. There's a strange stillness when you feel something shifting, when your soul whispers that something isn't right. I tried to brush it off. After all, he'd had tough nights before. He always bounced back. But this time was different. Later, I would learn the small details of that night, details that never left me. He had been reading in bed, a book about the Shroud of Turin, always curious about faith, about God, about what came next. He spoke briefly to Ginger, said he was going to the bathroom, and those were the last words anyone heard him say. I can still hear that silence. Even though I wasn't there, it has haunted me every day since, because I had known that quietness in him before, the kind that wasn't just tired, but ready. When the news came the next day, my world split in two. Lisa was only 9. How do you tell your daughter that her father, the man who sang her lullabies, who kissed her goodnight, who promised to see her soon, was gone? There are no words for that moment, just a scream that never quite leaves your chest. I remember driving to Graceland, the streets already filled with people, tears, confusion. The gates were lined with flowers, candles, fans who couldn't believe the king was gone. But to me, it wasn't the king who was gone. It was the man I once shared a life with, who called me Little One, who made me laugh until I cried. Inside, it was chaos. Reporters, friends, family. But I couldn't hear any of it. The world around me had gone completely still. When I finally saw him, I felt every part of my heart crumble. He looked peaceful, as if sleeping. But it wasn't sleep. It was forever. The morning after Elvis passed, The sun rose over Memphis as if nothing had changed. Birds sang, the city moved, people went to work. But for those of us who loved him, the world had stopped spinning. Graceland was surrounded by thousands of fans. Some had traveled all night, holding signs, photos, and records. They were crying, praying, singing his songs softly. It was like the entire planet was mourning. Inside, I tried to stay strong for Lisa. She was quiet, sitting by the window, clutching a small photo of her father. She looked up at me and asked, "Where did Daddy go?" I told her, "He's with God now, sweetheart." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. The funeral was unlike anything I had ever seen. The procession stretched for miles. People lined the streets, waving, crying, reaching out to touch the white hearse as it passed. Some fainted, some sang. It was love, raw, overwhelming, eternal, and through the tears I realized something. Elvis never really belonged to one person. He belonged to everyone, to every heart he'd ever touched with his music, to every lonely soul who found comfort in his voice. After the service, when the last of the crowd had drifted away, I went back inside the house. The quiet was deafening. Every corner held a memory, our laughter echoing in the hallways, the scent of his cologne still in the air, his records stacked neatly by the stereo. I sat at the piano. The keys were cold, and for a moment, I could almost hear him there, humming softly beside me, lost in a melody only he could hear. That was when I made a promise to him, that I would keep his memory alive, not as the star the world saw, but as the man I knew. The gentle, imperfect, beautiful soul behind the legend. People often ask me what I remember most about Elvis. It's not the shows, the lights, or the fame. It's the small things. The way he'd put extra sugar in his coffee. The way he'd quote gospel lines out of nowhere. The way he'd look at Lisa like she was the greatest gift God ever gave him. Even in his darkest moments, there was goodness in him. Pure, unfiltered goodness. And that's what I hold on to. In the years that followed, I often found myself reaching for the phone. I'd pick it up out of habit, thinking, I should call him, tell him this, ask him that. Then I'd remember. And the silence would rush back in. Grief is a strange thing. It doesn't leave. It just learns to live beside you. At first, it's a storm. Then it becomes a shadow. Then one day, it's simply a heartbeat that whispers his name. There were nights I would drive past Graceland when the city was asleep. I'd park outside those iron gates, the same gates that had once swung open for us, and I'd just sit there, staring at the mansion lit by moonlight. It looked so peaceful, yet I could still feel the echo of his laughter within those walls. Fans left flowers, letters, pictures. Some wrote, "Thank you, Elvis, for saving me when I was lost." Others said, "You'll never know what you meant to me." I would stand there quietly, reading their words, realizing that what I had known in private, the world had felt in their own way. He wasn't just mine to grieve. He was theirs too. And together, somehow, all of us kept him alive. As the years rolled by, the world changed, music changed, but the sound of his voice never faded. It was still everywhere, on the radio, in cafes, in the hearts of people who hadn't even been born when he left us. Lisa would grow up hearing stories of her father, not just from me, but from strangers who spoke of him as if they'd known him personally. That's what made Elvis different. He didn't just perform songs, he lived them. He carried emotion in every note, every lyric, until it became something universal. There were days I'd watch old footage of him performing, and I'd smile through tears. He'd move across the stage like he was flying, every step in rhythm with the roar of the crowd. But if you looked closely, if you really looked, you could see that moment when the lights dimmed and he would retreat into himself. A flicker of loneliness behind the charisma. He once told me, "The stage gives me life, but it also takes it from me." At the time, I didn't fully understand what he meant. Now I do. I think in the end, Elvis was searching for peace, for a home inside himself that fame could never build. And maybe, just maybe, that night he finally found it. People often ask me, do you ever stop missing him? The answer is no. You don't stop missing someone who shaped your soul. You just learn to carry their memory differently. Some days I still hear him in the wind, his laugh, his voice, that gentle, "Hey baby," he'd say when he wanted to make me smile. It's like time can't quite erase him, no matter how far the years stretch on. Because love doesn't end when a person leaves. Love is eternal. And that's what Elvis gave me. Not just love for him, but love for life, for music, for every fleeting, fragile moment we get on this earth. If I could speak to him one last time, I know exactly what I would say. I wouldn't talk about the fame, or the movies, or the crowds that screamed his name. I'd tell him that he was enough, that he always was, that the man behind the legend, the one who doubted himself, who felt lonely even in a room full of people, that man was worthy of love just as he was. I'd tell him I never stopped caring, that even through the hard times, the misunderstandings, the distance, I always believed in him, because I knew who he truly was beneath the glitter and the gold. I'd thank him for Lisa, for the joy, the laughter, the light he gave her in such a short time. And I'd thank him for the lessons, that love, even when broken, can still be beautiful, that some stories never really end, they just change shape. I still visit him sometimes, quietly, away from cameras, away from the world. I bring flowers, sit beside him, and talk softly. People think grief fades, but it doesn't. It just becomes gentler. And in those quiet moments, I can almost feel him beside me. Calm, finally at peace. He once told me, "Scylla, when I'm gone, don't let them forget who I really was." I promised him I wouldn't, and I never have. When people ask me what Elvis's legacy truly is, I don't think of gold records or sold-out shows. I think of kindness, of generosity, of the way he loved people with his whole heart, even when it hurt him. He had a way of turning pain into beauty. Every heartbreak became a song. Every loss became a melody. And that's what makes him eternal. To this day, when I hear his voice on the radio, I still pause. Because for a few seconds, it feels like he's right there again, laughing, singing, living. And that feeling, it's everything. So to him, wherever he is now, I'd say this: Elvis, you were my first love, my teacher, my heartbreak, my friend. You changed the world, but more than that, you changed me. You showed me that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real. You showed me that even after goodbye, love keeps going. And if he could hear me, I know what he'd say. He'd smile, tilt his head, and whisper, "Don't cry, little one. I'm still right here." Because in every note, in every memory, in every person who still sings his songs, he lives. Elvis never left us. He just went home. If you've stayed with me until now, thank you. This story wasn't just about Elvis and me. It was about love, memory, and what it means to never let go. Elvis may have left the stage, but he never left our hearts. Every time someone plays one of his songs, every time a new generation discovers that voice, he lives again. To all the fans who still keep his memory shining, who visit Graceland, who sing along in their cars, who share stories and tears, you are the reason his spirit still breathes in this world. And if you felt something tonight, if his story touched you the way it still touches me, then I ask you, keep his light alive. Subscribe to this channel, share his music, and keep telling his story. Because Elvis's legacy isn't just history. It's hope, love, and the belief that one voice can change everything. Thank you for remembering him with me. And wherever you are tonight, don't forget to look up and whisper, "We still love you, Elvis."